I'm going to call this meeting to order. Today is Wednesday, January 9th, 6 p.m. It's the budget workshop for the WIllington Board of Education. We like to start our meetings with an opportunity for the public who are present to speak. All of our meetings will have that. As long as we are under the 2-hour time, we would also offer that at the end of the meeting time in case you want to hear what we have to say and then comment. That's acceptable too. We ask that you sign up with your name and address so that we don't have to guess at the spelling of your names, and announce your name when you stand up to speak. And we ask that everyone limit themselves to 5 minutes each for a total of 20 minutes. If it's going longer than that, we could vote to extend the time, but we'd like to keep the public to speak option short. But since this is our first budget workshop, if there's anyone here who'd like to speak, now would be the right time. Okay, you're all in the same place we are, waiting to hear the presentation. Oh, no, please, our first taker.
I can sign in though.
Oh, okay, you can sign in later so we don't have to.
Sure, Matthew Clark, 42 Park Latham Road, Willington, Connecticut. So are these assumptions here, did you check out these assumptions? Are these calculated or?
Yes.
So you called and got estimates for all of these on the first bullet points on the detail page?
So we're going to be going over the budget today. This is our first real look at it. So that'll be part of the presentation, all of the assumptions and everything that we're going through. So we appreciate your comments at the beginning of the meeting if there's something in particular you want to question or bring our attention to. But we can't open it up for general conversation and answers, or it's going to take a lot longer than we would have time for. So,
Okay, well.
So I'm hoping that'll be part of the presentation. I'm sure other people have a similar question.
That's the first time I had a chance to take a look at it. So.
Okay, yeah, I haven't even gotten that far yet, so we'll see you in a minute. So we're hoping that. Is there anyone else who has any comments before we get started?
Is Joy is not here? No, not Joy.
Elena.
Elena's not here?
Elena's not here tonight, no. We knew in advance she would not be able to be here. She did agree to watch the proceedings on tape. So we're making sure that we have both audio and video for her to refer to later.
So her mother died, I guess?
Okay, no more questions from the audience? Then we will move ahead. Phil, if you want to take it away.
All right, so this was, I think you read my letter last night at the board meeting. You know this is an extremely challenging process to get to the point where what I'm presenting to you. So this was not easy, especially in the financial times that we're in. Before we start, I just have to start with thank yous because this is my first full go round, and I think Donna is probably tired of seeing me. And Donna and I have worked very closely on the budget. And thank you, Donna, for all your support. We bounce ideas off of each other. We try and find better ways to be more efficient. And I greatly appreciate your support, so thank you for that. The administrative team, Ken is the lone representative for the administrative team that helped prepare this budget because we have 2 new people. So Rich is sitting in the background. He's going to be learning this for center school. And obviously Holly has retired. So thanks to them. And lastly, Brenda Weber, my administrative assistant, who does a lot of running for me to make this happen. Many stakeholders were involved in this process, and I appreciate their time. So speaking of process, let's get to what we talked about last night. You asked me to create a budget process outline that was beyond our workshop calendar. That was created this morning, and I tried to go beyond just the titles and put in some explanation for people what the process actually looked like. And so it walks through the process, and a lot of this applies to not only our budget but other people that are presenting their budgets too. But this is basically written for us. I wrote this for the Board of Education. Okay. Any concerns, thoughts, questions about what's on there? Do you want to walk through this process?
No, I think that because it is the same process year after year and it's not new, I'd rather focus the time on the budget unless someone feels strongly otherwise.
Okay, the only other thing I had on here before we jump in was voting. You've had a couple meetings where you've talked about how you wanted to vote, and obviously we're not voting tonight, but how you wanted to vote on the budget. Michelle and I talked, and I know other board members had a hard time. We voted last year by program, and you were voting on a program, and then you got to another program and you voted against it, but couldn't go back to the initial program you already voted on, and that was problematic. And so I'm going to make the recommendation to you that you vote at the end on all of the programs at once, and then if you want to make an amendment, if someone wants to make an amendment at that point in time, you could do that. It would allow you to go back into any of the programs and adjust, if you so choose. It will probably be much easier to do that way than go program by program. Does that make sense? You good with that? Heard you all set with that? Better? Okay.
Trying to streamline the process and make it easier to
That was
understand where the changes
problem
may or may not
we kept
happen.
going back and forth
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
It
It was more than a little confusing. So that will not happen for quite some time yet. On the calendar, that was the point where we would adopt the budget at our regular monthly meeting in February, so February 12th.
So
I
we'll
have
vote
one
on the
question.
entire.
We'll vote on the
budget.
entire budget, someone will make a motion for the amount, and then if there are any amendments to that amount, and then we will vote on each amendment, and then we will vote on the final combined motion with whatever amendments there are.
We're going to do that today?
No, February
Okay.
12th,
Okay.
February 12th.
I have a question on the submission of budget items by the administrators. I don't want to micromanage or anything like that, but when the information we get is a line item, do you have a list of every item in that line item?
You get a program synopsis, I will call it, synopsis. When I get this from the administrators, it is every line.
Every line item?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And, I mean, I go line by line with them and ask questions. If I don't know what something is, Donna and I do the same thing back and forth. So when you get your package, I've gone through numerous times all of those lines. And I'll share a
The
couple.
only thing we deal with is the line item. We don't have a list of,
You do not see every detail. You see, when you see, and you'll see it when you get to program 1, you'll see educational supplies. I see probably 15 or 20 lines sometimes, depending on what the program is, and you see a total. And within that total, we've tried to give you enough detail, I'll expand on that. I've tried to give you enough detail so you know what's in there.
In terms of
is
process.
that available to us if we suddenly have an interest? I don't know if we want to go through.
But bring your
Every
magnifying glass, I
item,
just
but-
looked and the print must be like 5-point font, it's pretty tiny.
And I think that's one of the reasons you don't go through it. It would take you weeks. I mean, this is a process that for us, when we start first day of when we start school, we start thinking about this, which is hard because you're thinking about next year again. You're a month into school in October when you start thinking about this process. But we do go through. I mean, Donna and I go through line by line. I don't know that any superintendent has given you that.
Yeah. Years ago, we probably got something like that. We don't get that anymore.
But we're going to give you a lot of detail within the program.
Real lot of detail. But I'm not sure because you have a better idea of what is needed within each line item.
But you should also feel free to ask a question. If there's something you want to know, is repairs to the piano included in the supplies line item? He has all of the detail, he can look it up. If there's something in particular, we don't want to not cover things that are important.
Right. And what's nice is
The piano item is $150, but it's just
you're
between.
close. It's 175. I know that. And that's why I say when we go through line item by line item, we go line by line item. The way that this is laid out, and Donna's done an amazing job with this, is that when she gets the objects from the school, they're actually set by program. Program 1 is center school, and so when I get my layout, line item by line item, it actually has the program listed right next to it. And so we go through everything in program 1, and we go through everything in program 2 all the way through, and that is the bulk of all the lines.
So So my question about the process is, would you like to present on program one and then us have questions about program one? Or do you want to make all the presentations and then we'll hold our questions for the end? What's the easiest way for you to?
So I think what I want to do is just start with a little bit of the process, go through our priorities. I want to go through the snapshot to show you how we came to be where we are today, which is in your budget, and then go into program one. I don't want to answer a lot of questions about the snapshot that you see, because there's going to be questions outside of program 1 and 2 and 4, and that's not on our agenda tonight. Our plan tonight is to get through program 1, program 2, and program 4, and then we will get to the other nights. But I just want to give you, I think it's important for you to have a lens of how did I get to where I am for center school, how did I get to where I am for hall, and how did I get to where I am for transportation. Does that make sense? Okay, so this is the budget's a blueprint, and basically it's a set of resources in alignment with our priorities. And you're going to say, what are our priorities? And I think you know. It's a commitment to students. We've heard this from the community, small class sizes with personalized attention, ongoing professional development for staff to improve instructional practices, and after-school activities. Priorities, those were in our surveys. It was all over the place from our parents. Those are the things that I think the board is looking for, our community is looking for, and so those were when we make decisions, that's what we're using to make those decisions. We're applying funds to the mission, trying to do that within some sort of financial parameters, we'll call it. So my proposed budget of 2.94% is the result of $336,000 in cuts. Okay, I'm going to say that again because you don't have that number in front of you. That is $336,000 in cuts. And that is from the initial budget. We started, when this budget was submitted to me and Donna, we started at 6.99%. Last year, when the budget was submitted to Jackie, it was 6.9%. 6.9% last year was for a flat budget. No new initiatives, flat. The level services. And so I'm sharing that with you because that was level services last year. You ended up with a budget increase last year of 2.16. And obviously, it's not level services anymore. 6.99 this year is level services from what we had last year. I have it down to 294. So we are not at level services. I don't want to say anything other. There's a lot of programs here that have been, and lines that have been cut. Inflation is hovering around 2.5% as an average. And I shared with you, I think that I got a letter from the Board of Finance. It's important for you to know. They asked all boards requesting a 0% increase if possible. I will tell you that we worked very, very hard to get to 294. And I think you're going to see there's a lot of issues in the 294. Where is it coming from? What is the increase? Why is it that high? Fringe benefits and health insurance is an increase of $58,000, and those are negotiated, and some of them are contractual. Once we negotiate that, it's within the contract. Transportation and utilities is an increase of over $23,000. Special education is over $85,000, and system-wide support is up quite a bit because of magnet school tuition, teacher retirement evaluation, which we're required to do. It's an unfunded mandate, and our IT services. So I want to go to the snapshot and walk you through how I got where we are.
Is that in the snap packet or in the budget?
Should be in your binder.
Is there anything new in the packet besides the process?
No,
So everything else
you had. Yes,
is in the binder?
that
Or
was
just the one I...
you had, and those were just my talking notes I wanted to share with you, just as an opening. So if you look at that snapshot, you can see the 18-19 approved budget was $8,301,814. My proposed budget is $8,545,000, an increase of $243,000. And Donna came to me today, it is about 2.93 now. We had a couple, very small cuts that bumped it down a hair. I'm leaving it as 294 because I know you're gonna make adjustments anyways, okay? The assumptions are, many of these we know. So medical and dental insurance premiums will increase by a maximum of 14.5%. We've been told that. It's not gonna be higher than that amount. It could be lower, but we have to go on what we know. The max right now is 14.5. If it comes down some, you're talking about maybe $10,000 or $20,000 in savings, depending on how low it goes. All right. There's one placeholder in there for insurance, which means if someone wants insurance in the middle of the year, we are obligated to provide it. We have one placeholder in there. In years ago, you used to have two, and it's been cut to one. Liability insurance will increase by 3%. That is a known number. Heating fuel is going up to $229. That is a known number. Diesel fuel is $230. It's a known number. We currently have 2 out-of-district placements that we're planning for next year. You know, in special education, that could change.
We had 5 this year.
We budgeted for 5. And transportation costs,
Why wouldn't we budget for,
if
because you might get more, get someone.
you've never
And,
budgeted for a placeholder, that's in program 3, we'll talk about it when we get there, but you've never had a placeholder in case someone moves in. A placeholder would be about $100,000 between transportation and placement. Transportation increased by 3%, that is contractual.
these 2 were guaranteed.
Are they guaranteed? No.
There,
We know as of today that we're expecting, and I don't want to get into the why the 5 to 2, just because we're in a small community and I don't want to give away information, but it would mean 2 things. They're either coming back, 3 things. They're coming back to district, they're moving, or they're graduating. Right. The 2 that we know of are currently, it's written into their IEPs, which is legal, and we have to fulfill it. Okay? So I put on here that we have numerous shared services. Obviously, Donna works for the board and for, schools and for the town. Finance and HR, information technology. We share custom computers, that price went up. I'll get to that. Heating oil, electricity, and diesel fuel, we share. They fill up the buses at the public works lots. Mowing and landscaping, we share. The telephone system, we share. It's in CIP. And then insurances, we share. So I think it's important to also know that there's a lot of things in budgets that are not funded. I mean, there's CAPS told us that there's 380 mandates that you have to do that are unfunded. And it could be lower than that, it could be higher. This is from CAPS, who's the Association of School Superintendents. CPI.
The money that we share with the town, are the percentages the same as they were last year? I mean, the money's coming from the same bucket, but
If it's applied for,
are we paying more for, say, information technology?
no, we
Or
pay 47%
is
and
it the same
53%.
percentage?
It's the same percentage,
Same.
yeah.
Okay.
So CPI de-escalation training, there was legislation that required started with every teacher, every staff member to do it. There's a cost to train all those people, and then they've changed the legislation. It's an ongoing. Teacher evaluation, you're required to do a certain number of evaluations. It's not local control. You choose within their parameters. Some districts had to hire more administrators. We're lucky we didn't need that. Any of the annual reporting requirements around teacher evaluation, drill reports, attendance that you have to submit, they're not giving you money to pay your people to submit those things. Custom computers, all those we pay the technician to send all our power school reports in. Teacher retirement actuarial evaluation is every 3 years. That's a $9,000 bill this year. We're required to do it, we have to do it. And I said to Donna, what? It's stuff like that that's frustrating. There's a requirement that we have an administrator attending every planning and placement team meeting, a PPT. You have to have the administrator there to do that. We had Medicaid participation on there. Even though we opt out, it's still a requirement unless you get the opt-out. All right, and then DCF reporter training. Everybody has to have DCF reporter training. Those things take time, which equals money. No money for it. It's okay.
On the unfunded mandates, there are 380 unfunded mandates.
Yeah.
That means that every time we get a mandate, they never remove it, it stays there forever.
Pretty much.
They don't, the legislature still know how to
I just saw an
use the
updated
mandate?
legislative thing actually from EastCon, some things that they're working on. Gary sent it out. And there's more on there, but they're trying to correct some things.
Well, that's one thing,
But
but
it's
it's correct.
very slow.
Yeah.
It is, and it's about local control. Let local control make decisions. Because when you have a mandate, you don't have a decision. You just have to write the check. Okay, so budget process. I don't know if any superintendent has done this for you before, but I thought it was important, and this gets to Herb's questions about line by line and knowing where the cuts came from. I tried to give you a snapshot of here's where the reductions came from. I don't want to answer a lot of questions about this until we get to those programs, but you can see, $31,000 was cut from program 1 from center school, 11 from hall school, 20 from special ed. Transportation has no change because it's contractual for the most part, everything there. Health program, no change. We cut $8,000 out of curriculum and staff development, 2 of which is, I would say, is okay because we don't need to fund Keene because the state is now doing it again. There's another mandate that they pushed onto us and they took back over. Do you believe that? Utilities, not a choice. Program 8, operations and maintenance. We saw some savings from retirement, but we also cut district supplies. System-wide support. The percentage that was in there for my salary, I bumped down. And then fringe benefits, substitutes, is no change that's on there so far. So this brings it down, $74,280 was cut to bring it down to 6.09%. I will tell you that's my comfort range. I'm going to be honest with you, that was my comfort range. The next round of cuts where it says additional reductions, I will be honest with you and say it's pretty devastating. This is where going through, and you'll hear it when I get to programs, supply budgets were, many of them were reduced by 5%. Some were up to 70%. I'll share that when I get to the programs. Library books are entirely cut out of center school, another $1,000 out of maintenance. Hall school, the school-wide enrichment program, even though in your budget, I have to cross off, there's a line in your budget program that says it's the makerspace. It's not. That's like if we wanted to bring in an author, that's cut. We're kind of relying on PTA to help continue to support that. Maintenance was cut at $4,000. Program 3, special ed, we cut supplies. Transportation, again, no change. Program 5, health services, professional development. That could be CPR training or going to a conference. Program 6, curriculum staff development, was cut another $5,000 for curriculum leadership and professional development. Program 7, no change. Operations and maintenance was another $1,000 in custodial supplies for the district. And we cut our office supplies for the superintendent's office, another $493. So all of that really changes the amount of things that we can purchase to run our schools. And it was only $32,000. It is significant. You'll hear how significant when we get to the programs. That would still be a 5.69% increase. And then the final reduction was out of program 2, was hall school. elimination of library media specialist position, and the elimination of the school-wide enrichment specialist position. Total reductions bring it down to my proposed budget of $8,545,722 for an increase of 2.94%.
Phil, can I ask you an orienting question here?
Yes.
When you look on the page 1 of the budget process and then that one that starts with additional reductions, at the bottom there's that, it's a 6.09% budget increase year over year. The next one at the bottom is 5.69. Is that a running total?
After the cost.
Okay, because that's unlike the total reductions, those are just for that segment.
So
For total reductions, they're 32,451.
for
The additional reductions, and on the first page, it's 74,000. But that one figure is a running total versus an
Right.
accumulative.
Correct.
Okay.
You have your enrollment numbers in there. Our enrollment for the last 5 years has basically been flat, not going anywhere. 431, 441, 431, 440, 432, 460, pretty consistent. You see your sections in there. So if it's a good time, I think, unless you have any questions about enrollment.
Do we have any estimates for next year?
Patty called me and we have 40 students that she has in the hopper for kindergarten.
Actually, it's
Yeah.
higher than it's been. We have to get 40 until later in the spring in a couple of years.
Yeah, and that was actually after this was printed. So
Oh, okay.
we're on, she knows that that's something I want to know, and we're in constant contact about that. So if I can we go to program 1?
Behind tab.
Behind tab 2,
On the enrollment data that we have here,
yeah,
we projected the class size and the number of classes.
based on the numbers we have now.
Based on, so the enrollment of the early years for second, third, maybe the class size is fairly reasonable and
Yes.
it's almost the same as it was previously. And as they progress in the 8th grade, the class size increases slightly.
It's a bigger group too,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Now, those homeroom that we're talking about are
Yes.
well, this isn't.
No, that's
some
like-
classes, in some classes you might have, would you have 25 in, say, a social studies class and maybe 10 in a math class or anything like that?
No, they
How does it
travel.
work? This is homeroom, and I understand this, but
Center school travels as a group, so
Yeah, center school.
they travel by their group. And Ken, you do it because they do their scheduling based upon what a student's looking for. Most of your class sizes are consistent with the homeroom sizes.
Yes.
Okay, so, program 1. You want to let me get through this, and then if you have questions, or I can go section by section, whatever's easier. When you see the numbers on here, the numbers are broken off. Remember that this does not include special education staff, because they have their own program. So what you're looking at on here, for teachers, you're looking at all the classroom teachers, as you'll say a homeroom teacher, right? You're looking at unified arts, meaning art, music, all right, PE, Spanish. And then where it says teachers Title I, 0.82% of our teachers is paid for out of a grant. And believe it or not, that 0.82 is actually a portion of 2 separate teachers. So you have to add the 18.53 to the 0.82 for the number of staff that you have. for teachers. Secretaries, where you see 1.65,
They all fall in the Title One.
who falls, no, not all of them do. You mean by the grants?
Yeah.
That, where you see Title I, that just means we're using Title I grant money, and we'll show you the offset at the bottom of the page, of the second page, how we're paying for that .82 right there,
Okay.
okay? Secretaries, a portion of the secretary at center school is coded off to transportation, and a portion of that secretary is also coded off to special education, because that's a big portion of their job. And then there's one paraprofessional that's there that's, is the library media specialist there. Okay? You see the salaries there. The increase for salaries that you're looking at center school next year is $21,275 over the approved 18-19 budget. You see a decrease in secretarial because I told you last night Patty Locke is retiring, and we made an assumption of the level of person that would come in. Any questions about what I've covered so far? You have, and if you, in case you're curious, you have a page in your workbook that is the actual staffing entirety. That is every program.
An appendix.
It's, good question, it's not in my appendix, but it's probably in your appendix, yes?
Appendix F,
It's
third page from
F.
last.
So you can see that center school with all the staff, custodians, which are coded off to a different program, the special ed staff, all the teachers, administrator, any shared staff, there are 43.35 staff at center school. And Donna and I have this coded that way. We know where each of those individuals is coded to, summer program 1, summer program 2. What you're seeing as program 1 are the people that should be in program 1, classroom teachers and unified arts. Does that make sense?
Now, there's only one custodian for each school. I
So
thought
this,
we had more than that.
it's not in this program, but there's one maintenance custodian at center and one regular
To
custodian.
take care of the whole school.
Correct.
There's two. One.
There's two in all.
Well, two at center too, right?
Well, and remember that their titles are different because they do different tasks. The maintenance
Right.
custodian is the person that's during the day. There's one in each building the entire day. They're both maintenance custodians. Center school has one night person that comes to clean from 3 o'clock to 11. Hall school has two because it's 60,000 square feet.
Oh, we have a custodian on call during the day.
Yes. Yeah, it's within the
On
maintenance
site,
custodians. Yeah,
on
they're there.
site during the building.
Maintenance custodians, yeah. Okay, so purchase services there. The amount requested went up, and the reason why is Symphony Math was a program that was purchased last year. It was not budgeted for. It was taken out of supplies at the end of last year, and so that amount is now in this purchase service line item, which is why you see it went up.
And that's under which line, sorry?
Purchase services, subscriptions, math, science, and reading. So you see, if you were to look at subscriptions, you'd see things like our computer program Lexia, which is a phonics program. You'd see Symphony Math. You'd see IXL, even though that's not in center school. You would see Read Naturally. Those are online math and reading programs that are utilized in classrooms and for intervention. Power School annual contract, there's one for each school. This is the center school portion. Power School is our student operating system, is where all of our student data, names, addresses, grade, birth dates, all of that information goes to, grades, attendance, it's all into that system. And that is the system that we utilize to spit out our state reports. Critical to what we do. Copier and lease maintenance, the price has gone up, it's a contract, it's what it's gonna go up to. And you, for the most part, expect when you have contracts like that, with everything else, they go up. Telephone service is the same. Internet service is an interesting one. We have been doing a great deal of work because I told you that we're constantly looking for savings. And this $6,415 is paid to bring internet service into center school. We've done some research and found out that if we do the CIP project, which would allow fiber optic cable to go from the firehouse to center school, we're estimating about $10,000. That would lower this bill to between $125 to $250 a month. So there would be savings there in the first year if that project happens. And that's because it operates on the Connecticut Education Network, CEN, and there's a CEN connection at the firehouse. So we are also applying for E-rate to see which is just a reimbursement, which would help in this process.
When you say the first year, do you mean it stays at around 2,400 estimated a year after we do the fiber optics?
Correct.
If we do that?
Correct, it's flat.
So it's a continual savings, but it won't show up as a savings as far as balancing next year's budget?
If they are able to do, if they approve the project and we have the project, you have the CIP projects in the back of your binder, I think it's the last page. If they do that project this summer, you would see that savings come September 1.
And
Their
it
fight,
would pay for itself in.
It would pay for itself.
Just a short period of time, but not entirely this year.
and where I say between $125 and $250, it's about the amount of usage, how many gigs you're using, how many things you're using. They are fighting currently over pole space. That is why I don't have an actual quote for that yet, because the company is fighting, and they might have to put up their own pole because they're fighting over pole space. It is what it is.
Okay.
But there may be some, a small amount of savings there, or hopefully the following year you would see if that happens. Postage meter rental, they send out any letters that they have to send out, they're legally required to, you have to pay the postage. And disposal services is the trash, it's contractual. So you can see purchase services, that line has gone up a little over $3,000, and some of it's contractual, just to continue those services. Questions about purchase services?
So I'm assuming that you're very happy with all the services, like Symphony Math.
Yeah, we put them in there.
Imagine.
Yes, we put them in there because they're critical to instruction. When we utilize iPads or Chromebooks, and you can put students into small groups where a teacher's working with a small group of students and they're going through a rotation, all of that data is collected in that iPad or in their Symphony Math account, and you can see what a student has completed. You can see, what they're working on. You can see if they got stuck on a problem and they attempted it 4 times and they still didn't get it. So the data we're getting from that, those programs is critical, and they're research-based, and it's part of our kind of educational program for center.
Because you had mentioned maybe looking into iReady. So
So-
iReady does that as well, for both reading and math.
And that's, it's a good point. So Ken has been really investigating, I'll say, he's the leader of the push to iReady. We've looked at STARS, our testing site. It's not in, our testing program, Renaissance Learning. It's not in this program, but we're investigating it. And the reason why we're investigating is it's basically students test in reading and math 3 times a year, 2nd through 8th grade. And we're not entirely satisfied with what we're getting out of it. And we know that Ashford is using iReady. I mentioned to Ken tonight that to call you. And what was the other district that you just mentioned that you talked to?
Suffield.
Suffield was another one. And so we're looking to see if we can be more efficient and do away with Symphony Math and do away with the STAR and just use an iReady that has an intervention base in it. It has better data collection. It has the testing snapshots, that are within reason of, how often you're testing
I don't
students.
know anything about cost, but yeah.
Yeah. So, just our rough numbers, we know the cost, what we've seen for iReady is similar to the cost of what we're currently paying for STAR. But I also said to Ken, slow down, we really need to evaluate this program, K-8, and make sure it's the right fit, we're gonna get the right information out before we move from STAR to that. And so he's setting up that process now.
The other consideration is curricular alignment. Which one is more aligned to your curriculum? So you're testing what the kids are.
Yeah, well, our curriculum net is now CCSS aligned, I'm proud to say, so the iReady is more aligned to CCSS than is the STAR.
Common Core is what he's saying.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
And also more aligned to SBAC and things of that nature.
Educational supplies. So you can see this is the lowest amount that it's been. I didn't go beyond 2017, but I bet it wasn't that low then. This is a cut of 2,693, and I want to give you a sense of what that looks like. In program 1, in that supply line, this is where all of the school supplies are in, art, world language, computer, PE, math, music. We try to maintain the critical amounts in math and reading. They're flat, but I will tell you that art supplies, to program 2, my apologies. Art supplies are down minimally because she lost a lot of art supplies at Paul School when we get to program 2. Instructional supplies, which is basically for the entire school, is down over $1,000. It's 6%. It's down 6%. Computer supplies is down from 3,465 to 3,000. It's down 13%. PE supplies went from $619 to $213. It is down 65%. Music supplies went from $594 down to $188, down $406, down 68%. And media center supplies, which is the library, is down to $484, and it's down 38%. Gives you a sense of we're trying to salvage what's in some of our academic programs, but that's going to be very, very challenging. And I will tell you, if you are able to do this, you may be able to do it for 1 year, because these are people that are working with every kid in the building. So when I say library supplies and we're talking about repairing books instead of buying new books, she's repairing books. Those are the supplies that we've cut. Talk about PE and having PE supplies, $213 of PE supplies it buys a bag of basketballs. You start looking at the instructional supplies for the school, $17,000 for the entire school. That's all the paper. That is a number that is going to be extremely tight. Gives you a sense of where I.
And taking media center to 0 is that what you're saying? I mean, what goes into that cut exactly?
Media center to 0, are you talking about
Yeah, I'm
books?
talking about textbooks, yeah.
So that's the next line. That's
I'm
that's
sorry.
not out of, it's okay, it's not out of educational supplies, but I'll move on. So textbooks is down, I think that's a % off. The media center, and this is where, when you're making a decision, you're hoping that there's some sort of alternate funding or grant availability where you can be creative. Amy Redding runs an amazing book fair every year, and some of that money comes back to the school into the student activity account specifically for the library. There's enough money in there to cover this year of books, but I don't think you should be doing that every year. Maybe you can manage that for 1 year, but you want a solid foundation in your library, and she reads that library out, and it's heavily used, and you need the money there. So I cut it this year, hoping that the money that was there from the book fair could cover the cost and lower this budget a little bit. The other piece that's in there was periodicals, and that's down slightly. Those are periodicals that are some are for the library and some are for within the school. So you're talking about things like Time for Kids, really heavy nonfiction connected to science and reading, and it's just like several magazine subscriptions for classes that they utilize within the curriculum. Questions about the textbooks area?
In the library, like we close the budget right now,
Yeah.
that's probably going to affect the library.
It'll affect everyone.
Purchasing books and so forth, but later on this year, if it loosens up, would they be able to buy some books this year to cover next year, for example?
Yeah, I will leave the principal in charge of how they distribute, if they want to buy some this year or wait till next year. That's in the student activity accounts, and that's under the principal's control. We just got the reports for that. It just depends on if there's anything left in our budget and how we prioritize.
And it does seem from what you said last night that the budget's already so tight this year, which is why you froze spending,
Correct.
that unlike other years where we had a little bit more expectation of some flexibility, not last year and not this year, but in years past where there was a little bit more flexibility, I didn't see anything that would lead me to think that we would be able to prepay anything in this budget.
We don't know that yet.
We don't know, but I'm
I
just
mean,
saying
if you're
that.
freezing the budget, you might as well just buy the essentials and maybe
I don't disagree with you, Herb, but I also have to rely on Donna, and I have to rely on Jackie that have been there for, she was here for 2 years, and I have to look at what's left and where we are. When we prepaid items, you had approximately 10% left in your budget this time of year. We have 3. And it's not, it's just,
pretty tight.
it is very tight. So, I mean, if we're able to prepay stuff, this is absolutely a year to do it. To try and, I know that we prepaid, and this is getting off of this program too, but we prepaid MCOR, our maintenance company that we utilize for preventative maintenance. We've prepaid that contract before. But I had to put it in this contract year because in this budget year, because if we can't prepay it, we still need the service. Moving along. The next page here is in equipment. This is an offset. So there's $5,000 in computer equipment, and it says Chromebooks, but it could be, I talked to you last night about the crashing servers. It could be servers, it could be a lot. And so why do I say it's an offset? If you look at that at the bottom, where it says grant offset REAP, that's the rural education grant, and you have a tab, or it's not even a tab, it's behind, it's in the appendix in section 3, with an explanation of all the different grants and how we apply them. And it, appendix, no, come back one. Yeah, but come back when it has the explanation. Appendix D has the explanation, and down the bottom it says what it is. Just provides financial assistance to rural districts that lack resources to support development. So that's something that comes in. It has to be, it's a 2-year grant. For the most part, it has to be spent by September 30th, and then you cross your fingers and hope that the new one comes in. It usually does, and so we're banking that it's going to come in because there's an offset of $5,000. It brings your budget, your bottom line down to $5,000. Okay? Oh, I did put an accordance section, didn't I, Don? We were going back and forth whether it should be district or not. Maintenance, it's in there. Herb, you talked about the pianos. Piano tuning, that $175 is basically tuning the music piano one time for your music program. All of the other items there, in the past, when you've seen this, you have gotten the report from the superintendent that says building maintenance. And I thought it was important that you know there's a significant number of contractual items in that building maintenance line. It's not building maintenance like, hey, I have $23,000 to fix up center school. You don't. because this includes your required fire alarm testing inspections. It includes your pest control contract. It includes your M-Corps contract, which is preventative maintenance. You have to have your fire extinguishers inspected. You have to have your septic pumped. You have to have it inspected. You know, your lawn care. If you're not going to buy a $12,000 tractor for someone to do things, you have to pay someone to mow your lawns. And we actually have a really good deal, I think, a contract with someone. So you get the sense of what's in there. And quite a bit of that, it's cut $1,000 from last year. And I would estimate that there's about $5,000 that's actually in there for building maintenance. Meaning, the middle school principal came, or middle school custodian today, maintenance custodian today said, I have a leaking pipe, I need to get it fixed. That would come out of his maintenance for fall school.
How much was that, the amount
Which part?
separated from the contract? Is it 12,000 or?
I think it's around 5,000. I don't know, Donna, if we have that broken out easily.
I do not have.
I think when we looked at it, it was between $5,000 and $6,000 left over after all of the inspections, the contractual things that you're required to get. We could easily break that apart if you want to see that further. Other. Maintenance is down $1,000. Other. This is mainly conference travels, contractual. Principal supplies for the building are down significantly. That's, could be buying things for books for staff. If you want to do a reading group, you could buy books out of your principal supplies. You could buy certificates for students. It's used for a variety of reasons. And then dues, fees, and memberships for programs is contractual. You see the total expenditures there. In 18-19, approved budget was $1,678,936. It is over there $1,686,810. It comes down though because of the offsets from how we applied grants. The Title I grant, you notice, we're applying more and more money every year. And the reason why is because it's getting tighter and tighter. I will tell you that is every dollar in the Title I grant. So there's an offset there of $75,963. That is every dollar of the Title I grant. It's all towards staff. That won't increase next year unless Title I increases, and I don't think it will.
So what do we usually do if we don't use it all up?
Jackie, it's always been all used entirely. It's just never been used towards one program and towards all staffing. So Jackie had written this, and I think Title I last year was a piece of professional development was out of this Title I, and it just, our Title II grant is towards that this year, and it just needs to all be applied to staff to bring down the bottom line. The grant offset for Title II was applied in 17-18. You can see that was applied, an offset. It's not been applied the last 2 years, so that's at zero. And the grant offset for REAP was $5,000. That will come out of the REAP money we hope we get. And it brings this budget total down from last year about $23,000. Questions for me about Program 1?
I think that was pretty straightforward, and you did a pretty good job on the detail of all of that. We can move on to program 2.
Okay. All right, Program 2 is fall school. Again, you can look at the staffing if you want to see the entire group of staffing. This is 43.25 staff for the entire building. In this program, you see 20.25 teachers, and by the way, in that you have the social worker who's a shared person, so she's 0.75 at center school, 0.25 at hall. You have a math interventionist and, curriculum specialist and literacy coach who shared K-8. They're 0.5 in each building. So their number applies to each program. Again, you see secretaries that's balanced out because part of that, the secretary there is in transportation. And I also put part of the secretary there into maintenance this year. We don't have a director of facilities. We don't have a director. And so it's kind of my hat. And so, which is, I don't mind doing it. We have really good maintenance custodians that help with that. But Nicole Page does a lot of this work out of Hall School, and she does all the purchase orders, and she does all the organization for both schools. And so you have to apply a portion of her to that program, and it's not in this program. Okay? Paraprofessionals that's in there is 1.0. There's only one. Currently, that person is working within intervention.
Joe, where did the East Concord professionals appear?
Program 3.
Okay.
It'll be in special ed.
Special ed, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so in the staffing in teachers, you see it's down about $48,000. Remember that is minus 2 positions. And so if you start doing the math, Hall School had a lot of hiring last year, and we hired some dynamite people that would be a little bit higher, but there's a savings there, and that savings is after the elimination of those 2 positions. You see that, and I guess this is as good a time as any to talk about this. That was the elimination of those 2 positions. I think, and I put this in my letter to the community and to you, it is really, it disrupts a school. When you have 2 positions that they integrate into classrooms, and classrooms come to the library, and you have a certified library media specialist working with students along with a teacher, or you have a school writing enrichment specialist working in the makerspace. Those are big losses, and I'm going to be honest with you, those are things that districts have. They have those things. I will tell you, I think the makerspace is something that position sets us apart. So it was really, and I wrote the word painstakingly in my letter because I was serious about it. That was a really hard decision to cut those positions. My priority in doing that, and the decision to do that, was looking at going back to, do we still have small class size? Going back to those, the priorities that I mentioned in the beginning. Those are things that we were still doing. It is damaging though, and you are very aware that if you eliminate a position in this district, it's not coming back. This is not a 1 year, this is an elimination of the position. The only positive outcome out of that is that talking to Ken and having a good idea and just trying to come up with a way to salvage something out of those 2 positions is to consider moving the paraprofessional position that's currently at Hall School from an intervention position, move it into the library, and make it a joint library makerspace kind of space. It still is going to require classroom teachers to bring their students there. You can only have 1 class at a time for probably the most part, maybe 2, it would be tough. Space-wise, I'm not sure what it would look like, but at least you'd have 1 space that's always managed by a paraprofessional, and the person that would be planning those things would be the classroom teacher, and putting more strain on classroom teachers to do it. It's a positive solution in a not so good situation is what I'll say. It's trying to make the best of what's there. But that was something that I thought was a creative way to try and solve a problem and salvage some sort of a portion of those 2 programs.
What you didn't mention is the harm of also then losing the interventions.
You're correct.
Now, one of the things that I think that's why it's so important to keep smaller class sizes. Because all of this is part of your differentiation. So if a teacher has, the more you need to differentiate, the harder it gets if you have classes of 20, 25. And plus if you're given more, like the gifted, was that the enrichment teacher, and you take away the interventionists, again, if you increase class sizes, we have to keep that in mind. Teachers are not going to be able to do all of this. So as it is going to be hard.
I'm interested in the history, which doesn't show up in doing an annual budget necessarily, and I'm channeling, my own kids' experience with enrichment at all, and that was with Pat Penny. That makerspace decision and the hiring that went from that, I'm assuming represented a savings from Pat Penny's departure?
I don't think so, because she was top step, and I believe the person that we brought in is probably top step too.
Okay,
And she was brought in, that is it's a specialty position. You have to have a pretty gifted teacher to be able to come in through that type of program.
right, that's
Because you're working with all sorts of staff, you're working with all sorts of students. Kiara's talking about differentiation, and, basically what she's talking about is meeting the needs of whatever student comes into your room. Some kids need, things read to them. Some kids need to read it on the computer. Some kids, need to hear things. And that's just simple examples of differentiation. The more students you have, the harder it gets. But the purpose of that shifting from what, I don't even remember, do you remember Pat Penny's title?
and
She was
wasn't
gifted
enrichment?
talented.
Gifted and Talented
Gifted and
was her title. Was trying to branch out and do some more, so school-wide. I think there was a smaller group of students that were targeted from that position, and this was meant to be school-wide. Yeah, I honestly, this is not my dream, okay, and I want you to realize that. This is obviously not my dream. If I were going to build a school and budget's no concern, I'm going to put a school-wide enrichment specialist in every building I have. And it's going to be specific, and it's going to be, I talked to you last night about 21st learning spaces, 21st century learning spaces, and that we need to talk about that, because that's the type of situation that this person set up. If you walked into her room, you're going to see a Lego wall. She pulled out this basically to scale Sears tower that was built connected to a math class, and it was a bunch of cubes, and they had to figure out what building it was and do all sorts of research about it. So those are the types of, that's the type of integration you want built into your school. You want students to be able to go to the library and have access to someone who knows the books. And hey, you're interested in this, come over, let me show you this. And so, when you go from, 2 certified teachers, obviously, and it's not a knock at this paraprofessional. This person, is currently on our staff. But she's not a certified teacher, she's not either one of those individuals. So, again, I say painstakingly tough decision, and that's what got us to 294. Purchase services, you see it came down a little bit, just trying to clean up some of the things that were not used. So it's an accurate number of what's needed for all school. The climbing wall inspection is bumped down, and we're hoping that maybe PTA will support a little bit of that if we're looking at actually extending that climbing wall up, but not in this budget. That's the annual contract for Power School for the whole school portion. You see the copier lease maintenance portion went up. The same comment about internet service is connected to CEM. There may be savings here. That, I think, is actually shared across, the 6,000 is actually shared across multiple. It's a portion of the entire bill.
So the CIP project, if it's implemented, that will not affect this portion because this is not connected to the fire station.
I believe that's correct.
So it's only the one on program one that might go down.
But this is E-rate eligible because we're paying it to the
Okay.
internet.
Yep.
So those are things that E-rate we're in the process of working on. We have a conference call with them, I think, is Friday. Again, the postage meter rental, just the trash. and the music repairs and piano tuning was flat. Instructional supplies is down $6,970. Again, I think it's important you know what that looks like. It's a lot of money. Art supplies for the entire year for all the students is down $1,000. It's down 35%. World language supplies was cut in half. It's down 50%. PE supplies was cut to $250. It's down 70%. Music supplies was cut 70%, down to $1,000. You get the sense of what that does to those programs. And again, there's only so much supply money or areas that are non-contractual that you can pull this money from. We did try and maintain flat funding for math. You know, we're talking about $792 for the math program. It's not much. Computer supplies was flat, and the reason we kept it flat is just in case a server fails, and also in case it's always been there, but just in case it's not, we have a new governor, we don't know where will be the outcome. And instructional supplies at Hall went up a little bit, and the reason why it went up a little bit is because we actually, the media specialist had a supply line, we zeroed it out and put the money into the instructional support the entire school. So it doesn't show, you don't see that, but it's still a minus $6,970 in instructional supplies.
How about social studies and science, are they flat?
No, science is flat, and social studies was down 490, and I think that was because hadn't been used in the past, or we talked about it.
Yeah, it wasn't being used, so.
We have a lot, social studies has a lot of online resources, I believe.
What goes into the music supplies? Is that sheet music or?
Yeah, it's sheet music, it's, you can speak to anything else that comes out of music supplies. It's also shared.
It's a lot of sheet music, it's certain instruments, sometimes repairs on instruments, we have a line for that as well.
But that is band and chorus, it's not just one. So,
Right, so it'd be reeds and stuff like that too, again.
Oh, math, are they flat?
math is flat, $792. And English supplies is flat, $1,089. You're not talking about big dollars. That's where you make decisions to try and salvage what's there. Library books and periodicals, there's $1,500 left in books at the middle school. You'd have the remainder that you see that makes up that $2,400 is subscriptions. Or sorry, periodicals. I always see it as a subscription for kids or any of those two.
Do we keep track of the use, the circulation, periodicals, library and periodicals, to see whether they're worth?
If you have a person there to do it.
It's the
No, Isn't it
periodical.
online?
That
The
periodicals,
circulation
no, well, a lot of the periodicals are the 2-pagers, they go out to classroom, so even though it's in this section.
now?
but
Even
it's
at the
being-
middle school?
I believe so, yeah, right? Something like
I can find those, that's not me. The periodicals for the library at the middle school, it's not the time for kids, it's actual magazines, like, there's Dirt Bike and there's New Moon Girls. It's current magazines that the kids want to read just for that non-fictional reading. The kids that really can't handle the heavy non-fiction, it's a great way to get them in to teach them the text structures and that kind of thing. But that I believe we've cut for next year as well, the periodicals. So there won't be any new magazines.
So you cut books, but not the periodical,
There's $2,406 left in that account.
or either books?
I'm not gonna micromanage how someone wants to use that money. They're gonna make a decision to use that for as best they can.
It's not gonna go far in the book board.
No, it doesn't go far to the board.
Books are very expensive.
They are. Computer equipment, the Chromebooks that you see there, again, that's an offset, it's $6,800, and if you turn the page again, you look into the bottom, so that's another REAP grant offset of $1,600, so it's showing up in the budget, but it's actually not there, it's an offset. And again, so there's about $11,800 we're using in grant money from REAP, and if we have a critical email failure, that's gonna take precedent over buying Chromebooks. But there's no cycle right now for replacing Chromebooks like we have for computers. Going up to building maintenance, you see the same thing that's up there that was similar to center school, all the contracts, the fire alarm, pest control, fire extinguishers, all of those things. That account is down $4,000. It's because I cut $4,000, and there's, again, you're closing in on a 100-year-old building. If there's maintenance that needs to be done, things that come up, this is the account that it happens out of, and after those contracts, there's not a lot of extra money in there. Sports and extra activities is flat. You see sports equipment is down to $2,000. Again, we made a decision. I feel like if I'm going to cut the programs that are unified arts, that this is another area. $2,000 for sports equipment is nothing. I mean, game balls, I think, for basketball are like $80 a piece. And there's an expectation for what you have for equipment when you play games. So, school-wide enrichment, it says makerspace. You can cross that off on your budget because that is not the makerspace. That is, Ken, you want to talk about some of the programs you've done? That's the assemblies you've had in.
Yeah, so anytime we bring an assembly, this is the line that we pull from. So, this year we have 2 assemblies scheduled around diversity, multiculturalism. We had a wonderful one centered around Life of Anne Frank. And then later in the year, there's another one with similar themes. We brought in internet safety consultants in the past. This year we have another assembly called Ryan's Story, which aligns to our Say Something Week, which we do with St. David Promise. And Ryan's Story is about basically online bullying, and it's a father's story. I had a son who suffered from being bullied online. So a lot of it is school-wide initiatives that we use this money for.
And all of that came out of 2370 this year?
We supplement PTO funds with that as well. PTO graciously gives us money
They have a line as well.
to put assemblies together.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're an amazing negotiator. I
Yeah,
want you to
no.
buy my
Well, we
next
are
car
pretty
for
good at
me, because
negotiating as well.
that's impressive.
That could be
Okay.
one program.
Yeah, that's what, when he kept going, I was like, and, okay.
So the two
Yeah.
for this year, the 2 diversity assemblies that were planned were pretty much accounting for what you see there.
Thank you.
Depends on the program. Conference travel is contractual, it's down. Principal supplies are down. The media center supplies that you see is zeroed out. That's what I was talking about before, is put into instructional supplies. And then the dues and fees is contractual. So you see after the offset here, that Hall School is down 80,000 something. I can't get it on my phone, but it's around that. So, it's a lot of money. Questions about program 2?
Is that 82,000, what portion of the cut in the overall school budgets is that? Do you know?
It's 87,000 is about 1%. That's what you're asking? So, this is down, if that's how you're looking at it,
Mhm.
if it's down
A
about.
percentage point of that, yeah.
Yeah, and I think looking at, if I were to look at the increases in transportation in fringe benefits health insurance, that's about a 1% increase alone. And then special education increase is about 1% alone. And then IT system-wide support, magnet school tuition, teacher evaluation is another 1%. That's really what makes up the 2.94. Any other questions about program 1 or program 2?
On the stipend positions.
So stipends are, it's, what's in there is contractual. You know, some of the things you can make choices, you can make decisions about programs. I know you've talked about sports in the past. Sports, you know, you could eliminate sports or make it a pay to play. I don't know how positive that would be, if it would be welcome in the district, but you would save about $30,000. I think you could have an army here at your door, knocking at your door, asking about that. It's not a lot of money.
We pay stipends for more than coaches.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So
So
we have heads of department.
team leaders, curriculum. So we don't have, you know, if you go to Mansfield, we're going to Mansfield tomorrow. The administrative team and I are going to Mansfield for a regional professional development in the afternoon. When you go to Mansfield, they bring a science coordinator, a social studies coordinator, and these are people that are we don't have that. We have an $800 stipend, I think is what it is. It's about that. We don't have to fill those, but I don't know who's going to write your curriculum, because someone's got to do those things, and those are the things that those people are working on. Team leaders, same thing. You could find some savings. I
Do they have
don't.
a title, or just head teacher, or
Team leaders?
you got team leaders?
Team leaders is the title. So there's numerous things.
So they get about 8, right?
The rates are negotiated, and to be honest with you, Herb, if we were to pay them hourly, it'd be quadruple. You know, what, and we've experienced that when we get grants and they say, you know, you're not paying it out of your budget, and you have to pay a teacher an hourly, what their hourly contracted rate would be. It doesn't go very far.
So the main function is developing curriculum, for example, or
Sure, working with new teachers, going to running data teams.
mentoring?
Absolutely, coaching, running team meetings. They're doing a lot of things. I mean, he has, how often are you meeting?
With my team leaders?
Yeah.
Every other week, twice a month.
So twice a month, they're after school meetings, outside their contracted hours. So same thing in center school, they're meeting, they have a meeting scheduled that's twice a month. So you're getting a lot of extra value out of those positions.
We must have quite a few that are getting stipends. In coaching, we have 2 or 3 coaches, right?
Depends on the season, yeah. So like fall, you're looking at a boys soccer coach and a girls soccer coach. Those are the only things we offer in fall. And then you go to the winter, it's boys and girls basketball. And then spring is softball and baseball. So we don't offer, and we used to have field hockey. I think we've had a running team in the past. We have minimal sports offering.
So this line item for extracurricular activity clubs is more than clubs. At $11,880.
Sorry, I didn't speak.
That's
It's,
for,
no, that is clubs. So
oh, that's clubs. We have
So-
another one?
So this was and this is the reason I'm glad you're asking about it, because
What was
this
the
is.
question? I missed.
So he's asking about the 11,880 that's flat funded in
That's for
clubs. And so
So,
when we did our parent survey, we got loads of information back that said more extracurricular activities and more STEAM-related items. Those are all over the place. It was written in many different ways, but that's what they were looking for. And so the middle school, and we're hoping, I helped, working with Jenny Arkin in Human Services. She just got a grant for $3,000 that we're trying to provide some clubs at the elementary level as well, because they're well-attended, and the more a student is connected with their school, the better they perform. And so we're trying to offer those clubs. A semester club is $400-something, I believe. Again, if we pay that hourly,
Does this also include like the musical and
no,
so these are only the clubs?
those are clubs.
Those are all clubs. Where's the line item for the other groups that we were talking about?
Stipends,
The stipends for
district-wide, right? Yeah, it's
head teachers, ones that
the,
help in curriculum. And then we have a line item for coaches and also for the activity clubs.
one second,
Where's the other one?
Program 6,
6?
yes. That's
Yeah, it would be in
control.
program 6, not in this one.
Oh, it's not in there.
Right,
No,
team
it's not in
leaders,
this
curriculum.
section.
Okay.
Curriculum and staff.
So,
Yeah, the clubs is something totally different.
And do the clubs run
so
for how long?
Why don't you talk about some of the clubs that you've run and how long they've
No,
run?
we've talked about this before, I forgot.
In this, well, we've done it dependent on how many clubs there are, how many students are interested. And then we base it off of how much we can offer, but it's usually around 10 to 12 weeks is what we've done.
And how many different
So,
clubs?
and they meet once a
Depends
week?
on the year. What's that?
How many times a week?
Once a week on Thursdays, yeah.
They have a club day once a week because they provide transportation.
Oh, there's transportation, that's
Yes,
right, okay.
bus. Sometimes two late buses, depending on the number of kids and where they live in town. So that's also dependent on how long we can offer them for transportation cost is. So in the past, we've had things like video game club, gaming club, we've had the Pinterest club, which was great. They would go on Pinterest and make items and make things, it was really awesome. We had studio production club, thank you, the crochet club. It was a regular gaming, board game club.
Board game club.
Yeah,
It's based on student interest?
student interest
And
and
what people-
teacher interest to say,
what
that,
they'll
you know,
offer.
hey, I'm interested in crocheting, I'd like to teach kids that, you know, and then they would sign up for it.
So we have a lot of money involved in the stipend. Between the coaches,
Sure, there's about 50, if you want to know a number,
50,000.
there's probably about $50,000 that is in stipend area. And about, I would think about half of this number though is transportation.
I was gonna say, where's the 50,000?
Because I don't think that's in, I don't think of the 11.8, I don't think that's in transportation in program 4 for clubs,
It is.
after school clubs. Yeah, that doesn't cover the after school
No, no.
transportation.
so we're maintaining that pretty much, maybe decreasing the team leaders, but we're eliminating the assembly. How many assemblies do we have? 3?
It depends on the price.
2 or 3 a year?
Yeah.
They're
The,
being eliminated, but we're keeping the 50,000 in the stipends. Wasn't any way of shuffling some of that money around a little bit?
Meaning what?
Well, in the assembly, it was $2,300.
Which is a one-shot deal. You have a group come in, and your team leaders and your stipend
It's
positions.
school-wide.
Well, the other thing is,
It's school.
right, but I still think you could get that from the PTA. Whereas the team, I mean, you can speak to what your team leaders do in the building, what your stipend.
yeah, they're invaluable. We live and breathe our team leaders and the work that they do, because not only are they in team leader meetings, you know, talking about school-wide issues and solving school-wide issues, but they run all their team meetings. And they really set the direction for their entire team, so they're invaluable to us. So that's a really high on my list of priorities, is maintaining positions like that, and like the coordinator positions. We have math coordinators and ELA coordinators that are just driving the work that we're doing with our curriculum over the last few years. So that is the best money that our district can spend.
So when you're talking about 50,000, what, I don't see the 50,000.
That's combined, that's the, is that about the total amount that goes, it's across programs. So I don't want you to think there's 50,000 in this program, there's not.
So the 50,000 includes academic.
Oh, absolutely.
Stipend.
It includes,
So it's not
there's a
just,
whole list and
It's a stipend.
contractually.
it's stipend, but it's for,
Some is academics, some is sports and clubs.
Correct.
so it includes academics.
So it's across multiple
Okay,
areas.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's not in the same kind of spread through the.
Correct. Hall School is the one that has sports, and they're the ones that have clubs, and that's why it's here. The purpose of the way Jackie broke these programs up, and I agree with it, and I was saying to Michelle Sterling, business manager, is copying our overall programs because they like how it's laid out. You can see what it costs. The intent was, what's it cost to run Hall School? What's it cost to run Center School? What's it cost to run a special ed program? You can see that by program, even after grants. Any other questions about Center School or Hall School?
Okay, moving on to.
We're coming back to these on.
Oh, yeah, we do have questions. So the last program of the evening is Program 4 is Transportation. I would say this is probably one of my fastest programs because I have a contract. You see in their secretarial supported district in school because they help with bus routes, they help solve bus problems, they're there at the end of the day, they're on the radio. So they do quite a bit of transportation work. Brenda will go out, who's my administrative assistant, has a portion in here too, I believe, Donna, correct?
Correct.
And, you know, if there's a question, we get a question about a bus route or a pickup spot, we go out and drive it. We go look to see what it is, and she's also working on routes with transportation. So that's why you see a portion of the secretaries in transportation. The bus contract is contractual, that is representative of a 3% increase. If you look down below, it shows about this is the transportation for all of our students, and this is not special transportation, does not include special transportation, special ed, but all the bus information, the number of miles, I think they're, 104,000 miles in Willington, 574 miles daily. It's pretty consistent with the number of buses. It's a lot of miles. This is one of the areas that you talk about unfunded mandates or legislation that ties your hands. I've looked at this 1,000 ways, and I would love to take our buses and have a computer program that says, here's your bus today. It's run every day. Any student that's being picked up is taken out of your list, and that program is inserted. Michelle, you run bus 4 today, and bus 4 takes a student home. Because then if you need 6 buses, you get 6 buses. If you need 3, and you can do 3 buses under an hour, then you only need 3 buses that day. They wouldn't like it, because I don't know contractually how you would do that. But we have to provide transportation as part of the law. And you have to plan for a seat for every student. Even if we know they're going to be picked up every day, you have to plan for that. Because if one day they decide they're getting on the bus, you're required to be on the bus. It's 24 hours.
Plus
So,
you also have, I'm assuming for transportation companies, they're not gonna be able to have
accommodate.
on-call bus drivers.
It would be a negotiating masterpiece. However, if you have your own bus fleet, which some places do, you could find creative ways to do things. You could say, hey, if we run 3 buses today, you have 6 drivers, you have a bus driver and you have a monitor.
Is that what you're gonna do
Oh, I would love
after
to
you
do that,
retire
but-
from the superintendent? You're saying-
I actually reached out to a company in Ellington and asked it, and he said, this is not, he said, I absolutely have the engineers to do this, but I would need a few superintendents to do it, and it would cost them about $1 million to do it. And I said, I don't have $1 million. But
you planted the idea, maybe
That's the
next
creative
year.
thinking that I think, you have to find some way. The contract went up 3%, and that $395,000 is what represents that. Musical events, Ken, you want to speak to what the transportation is for the musical events?
Yeah, so they do fly-ups, they go up to the high school and sing with the high school choir, play with the high school band. This gives our 8th graders really good experience and gets them hooked into music once they get to the high school. It's very important. They do nursing home visits. They get out into the community a bunch during the year, usually leading up to their big concert at the school, and perform out at nursing homes, events like that. They do Eastern Regionals, where our students audition for this really prestigious choir or band where they get to play with some of the best musicians from all over the state, and that also comes with a cost. So we always attempt to pass as little of this cost off to our students and families as we can. So that's why you see it in that line.
When you start thinking about PR and marketing, that's, you have people going out to sing in the community, or they're singing at the tree lighting, even though that wasn't a transportation thing. We try and take all those, PR things we can get. Because
Of course, I was at the senior banquet, I go to the banquet, being a senior, and pleasantly surprised, the hall chorus came in and made a presentation of Christmas carols, and it was beautifully done. Really, talk about piano, it was very, everyone was really impressed. They got a standing ovation at the beginning.
They do a ton in the community. I mean, they're at Willington Day, they're at everything,
Yeah.
the tree lighting.
I don't know why, I've kind of felt this way for years, but they have a tremendous reputation. They do a lot in the community, but I think we've been afraid to tout that. Like, we've been afraid to step up and say, our arts department is amazing. And it's just, again, it's PR, it's marketing. It's not that something else that we do is not amazing, but it's just that we do this very well, and we have some very talented students. And it'd be nice to sell that.
Now, this after-school bus, after-school activities, they're allocating, 1658 for that?
Correct.
Now, does that mean that you have one bus, and let's say there are 10 youngsters that get on that bus because of an activity, that one bus takes them all over town?
So it depends on the number of kids for the number of buses that we get, and I think you ask if we have, do you require transportation? Sometimes the students that you want to attend clubs and need some guidance after school, and not to go home to an empty house, are the students that don't have the transportation home. And so that's why we provided, and I've been torn, because we could probably double the amount of clubs we offer students if we didn't provide transportation, but I would be definitely leaving some students out of that opportunity. But sometimes it's one bus, sometimes it's two, and we get I will say, an outstanding rate for clubs.
But this 1658 is not the Thursday night bus for 12 weeks.
It's a portion of it. This is what I think, and this is what's hard, is that this is what's been applied, how it's been applied in the past. Some of it could come out of a grant, and Donna's shaking your head, This is where it's hard to know how much you're going to use for transportation. That's minimal.
Right. Well, because you just said you could provide twice as many clubs, and like, you're not going to provide twice as many clubs for $1,600. Okay.
It's where we looked at, and what I'm speaking to here is that we wrote a grant, and the grant we're going to use for some after-school activities, and it said we could offer twice as many clubs if we didn't provide transportation, but I think that you can't leave students out that need the opportunity. I'm not going to and I've looked at creative ways, if you ended at the same time as center school and they could fly through and pick them up, but it's just, you'd have to reroute every day to figure that out, so.
My contract, I haven't read the contract lately, but my contract, are they supposed to upgrade their buses?
Yeah, they have really specific rules of how new they have to be, and we have a 5-year bus contract. We're in year 3, or is this year? 1920 is year 3.
So when do they upgrade a certain portion each year?
They are required to.
One or two buses a year?
I don't know how, that's up to them. I don't know how they do it, to be honest with you. They have to be mechanically sound, and we can, there's all sorts of things. They have to have working radios on them. If they don't have a working radio, then we can find them. There's several different ways. Things have gone well with M&J, and I will say, M&J is our contractor. Our local bus drivers, who almost all of them are Willington residents, are tremendous. They saw if there's something that comes up, somebody misses a bus, you can hear them on the radio, I'll reroute, I'll pick them up. They know the routes, they know the kids. So it's
You're happy with it?
big kudos to them, yes. But it's a lengthy contract and there's a lot of requirements there of what they need to do about inspecting buses and what they have to have on their radio. We're pressing them right now because of, there's video recording on there. And we've struggled with that. It's one area that's been challenging. So if we have an incident on the bus and the principal wants to order a tape to see what's going on, instead of talking to 14 kids, you can watch a tape and you can see for yourself and hear and go, what are you doing? You can talk to the student and solve the problem right there. We have had some problems getting tapes from them, and it's been more inconsistent than we prefer. That's something that I take ownership of and talk to them.
Well, I'm sure they maintain them, they have to stay well, make sure they're serviced.
Well, the buses, yeah, they have to be inspected, yeah, absolutely.
I'd be interested in whether we're getting new buses or old buses. Sometimes we get new buses and we're getting our share. In other words, we have, 6 buses running approximately?
Yeah. Age of buses, I don't know the actual age of the
It
buses.
seems to me that one new bus a year would be fairly reasonable. That would give any single bus 5 or 6 years of service.
Although, and I don't know like the mileage, I have no idea how many miles they go up to or how they do it. I'll find out for you.
Other questions?
The other things that are in there, just the kindergarten orientation is a trip, obviously. And then the diesel fuel for the buses is the contracted rate, so.
Did I just space out, or did we not talk about the special ed budget that much?
We
We
didn't at
skipped
all.
that today because that's a whole nother conversation for next week and the week after. If you look on the schedule, the programs
Okay.
today was
Okay.
1, 2, and 4. You are not mentioning it, you did not miss
I
it.
hope I remember my questions.
Please write them down. I promise, even if you were asleep, you would not have missed that one.
I was gonna
Okay.
say, I'm not gonna stand with it,
And
but
all the programs in one day is too much. And usually, program 1 and program 2 is pretty lengthy. And there's more conversation about
I
that.
like the format of this. I like
yeah, it's very
the
clear.
3 years presentation. I like
Trying
it
to
for comparison purposes.
transparent and
Excellent.
give you the information. And obviously, there's more in your appendix around the schools if you want, a lot of the Reddit for Center School, I left alone, I cleaned some things up, because we're on the same path. Not a lot has changed since last year. Ken cleaned up the whole school one. But for the most part, we're on the same path. We're working on professional development, we're working on curriculum, we're working on, quality instruction, so.
Other questions about transportation? Anything on this budget that you have questions about?
I have a question that's maybe too hard to capture, but it strikes me that within some of the cuts that you've had to work on, Phil, with this, really challenging budget year is, most of them seem to be focused on some of the things that some people would say, oh, those are kind of the nice to haves, maker space and music and art and, maybe some sports equipment and stuff like that. I guess I'd kind of like to see, I don't know if I'm asking for more data or whatever, but just sort of some context for what we've had to do in year over year in budget cutting that's affected music, drama, sports, the things that frankly, a lot of the E.O. Smith grads that were from Willington schools have got sports scholarships. I mean, things that I don't think are just sort of, oh, wouldn't that be nice for the kiddies kind of stuff. To me, it's just central to the whole educational process.
So are you looking for more information about the cuts we've had to make over the years leading up to this?
Yes, and what this year does. Sort
And
of
then
like,
this year, so
I guess
it's
I'm
been
wanting
going,
to
it's been
see
going
if
down
it's-
and then this year goes.
yeah, maybe a fever chart or something,
Okay.
and maybe I'm probably doing apples and oranges, so that'll make people crazy because it won't fit into the programs very well. But I'm curious how much
I mean,
you feel, or you feel that there's possibly too much erosion in these areas?
art supplies, 17, 18,
Yeah, I mean,
3,100.
I know.
18, 19, 3,069. 19, 20, 2,000. There's not suggested erosion. There is an erosion. It's in the heart, it's an $8 million budget. However, the amount of money that's not, you don't have choices on it because it's contractual, is huge. It's a huge portion of the budget that you don't have choices on. The areas that I have to be creative on are staffing and trying to find some things for staffing. Again, when I went through priorities, that's why I made cuts that were in those areas. And, you know, you hope, I mean, what does that look like? So if she can't do a clay project, it's potential for that. Is that, you know, is that allowing the teacher to send home a letter to say, you know, here are the instructional supplies that I need for your child next year for their classroom? Every grade level doing that? That's what you're starting to look at. Because when you start purchasing paper for a classroom, where I cut half the supplies for a language program, and again, that's why I say, if you go back to the initial snapshot, and I did this intentionally to show you that $32,000 that I cut, that number from page 2, additional reductions, is significant. I think people will survive on a -1%, a flat. Some of them could maybe survive a little bit more. But when you start, you know, you cut into some of those programs, that's significant. It's very challenging. It's not like there's a load of grants out there. It's not like there's, you know, if there are, they're super competitive. I told you I was going to put grant last night, and you live in Connecticut, you can't get it. So I can't necessarily, I can show you a 3-year history. And I just want to make sure I say this right, Donna. If that number was a budget number, there was $5,000, I'm making this up, left in instructional supplies, and it was transferred. Does that show up in 17, 18, or does it remain the same?
It shows up in the 17-18 is an adjusted budget number.
So that means that's the number that was spent and used. Some of that money may have gone back, so
You might have frozen the budget.
Might have frozen the budget, but you have consistently returned money to the town. I doubt that will happen this year, but you have consistently done that. So when you return a percent of your budget, $80,000, or you know, return $250,000, I think Dave had said in his time here, he returned over $1 million. But when you return the money, but then you continually cut it, if something happens or you start diminishing programs, because that's really the control I have. That's where I can address $20,000. For me to address, and I'll play worst case scenario here, for me to address 2.94% down to 0, 5 teachers, probably around that number. And I say 5 because if you eliminate a classroom teacher and it becomes a seniority issue, it's not someone that's on the top step, it's probably someone that's taking single insurance and making $50,000. You're not going to see that number. So I say 5. So it's, you know, it's significant. And I don't mean to be a downer, I don't mean to be dramatic, because I think this conversation's happened a couple times, but I'm telling you when I listened to Jackie Jacoby, who I have a ton of respect for, and sat with Donna and I several times to go through this budget, her response back to me with a big question mark and an exclamation mark was, you really cut some of your supply lines by 60-70%? I don't know where else to find the money.
So if there were like a pie chart, and you probably thought about it in these terms, a pie chart that showed contractual or fixed cost in your budget, and the part that has some decision-making
We can show you
allowed.
that.
Yeah, what is it? It's small, right? Like 12% or something?
It's minimal.
It's more than that. It's more than that.
Contracts,
I was just wondering.
We can easily do it. by
If you did
charts.
contracts plus
Yeah.
fixed.
benefits.
Well, plus other
It's not gonna be by
costs.
program,
That's okay.
it would
We did
be
have that.
by what's contractual. Dave used to do it, but
Yeah.
it was laid out differently because it's not by program.
Right, but if you did contractual and fixed costs, things that we have no control over, like the price of diesel, it would be, you know, what
Let me
would
see
be
what I
left would
can
be.
create, just to give you a picture of what it would look like.
I think it's safe to say it would be a small sliver of the pie, and not as much pumpkin pie as I would like to eat at
Sure.
one serving.
Last year, I don't know if you remember this, Phil,
Yeah.
Jackie had given us some summary sheet on how she could went from the starting point to the ending point. And I have my notes, she didn't put percentages, but she had given us, okay, the initial of what was 6.9%, 2.2% of that was due to teachers' contractual obligations.
Donna and I talked about that. We're not quite sure how she formulated that number.
Okay,
So,
If you can't compare apples and
It
oranges,
was
you shouldn't show the oranges.
and
Okay.
I created my own snapshot, which is why I tried to show you exactly how I cut things, but I mean, the page for, that you don't have that I could share with you, and the glasses because it's really small, is just the overall, Donna has this broken up by program, and it's just down, but it shows the decrease or the increase in programs.
And
So-
you
But
can-
it's not
yeah,
by-
look at that.
It's
but
not,
if you gathered up all the teachers' salaries,
Yeah.
wouldn't that be a number you can come up with?
oh, yeah, definitely.
So 2% of our budget increase is due to teacher salaries, 2% for transportation. So to get a sense of what's driving,
Special ed.
But remember, it's not by that's not by program.
right,
And so that's what and this is, I think I said this to you, Donna, was trying to make sure, however you look at these, the purpose of the program is to know, is the cost of it, is it getting more expensive?
no, I like that, that's important.
So, but I could show you, you know, what the percentage has gone up for salaries, I could show you, but it's not, there may be an offset in a grant.
No, but that's fine, I think it's important to look at it by program, by program, I totally agree. But I think for the other boards, the Board of Finance, for example, which is the important board for us to sell our budget to, is to make them understand, okay, teacher salaries drive a third or more of our budget increase. Transportation drives 1% of that increase. Kind of a broad, and I understand what you're saying, and I think looking at by program, of course, is the right way to look at it. So I don't know, something.
I can also do percentage by program of what it costs, but you're really looking for what are the big items that we have to do? Transportation costs $350,000.
What is fixed? What can we not negotiate? You know, we cannot negotiate the salaries at this point, but and the transportation and the insurance.
The reason I'm thinking you crazy about pie chart talk is because my sense is that that sliver is getting smaller year over year. And
It
so,
is.
it just makes it an unhealthy mix in any budget.
I don't know.
No, I
that
don't
can
think, whether it's a
compare.
school budget or a business's budget, it's an unhealthy, you know, quality of the budget, if it's declining so much every year.
It might be hard to recreate for past budgets because someone else has
Done it?
someone else's spreadsheet. You know, going forward, like next year, we might be able to do this year and the previous year, but for this year, since Jackie's not here, her calculations were a little different.
Right,
And I don't think the big difference is between this year and last year. I think it's probably back.
before this.
Well, that's,
Yeah.
that's my, this is why I said this at the beginning, is because remember that her initial budget last year for a flat level funded budget was 6.9%, and it went down to 2.146, whatever it was. And now, 6.99 again is the increase to maintain that, and now I'm down to 294. So, the sliver that is, you have control over, she's, you know, the big,
We were already down 3% from the previous year.
You have to cover that 4% difference somewhere
4%, right?
right,
Yeah.
between the 6 and the 2.
right, I mean, if insurance goes up, you know, $50,000, that's over 0.5% to make up for that.
The budget is, it's really the driving force behind everything that we do. And if we don't provide the necessary funding for education, then the students are losers as a result. You know, we've had pretty good support from the town over the years, but as you mentioned, it's been a declining budget. And we haven't enhanced any programs or anything like that. We maintain them. And I think that our staff are doing a super job, you know, considering the amount of money that is available. And I think it's hard for some staff members to run a program in some areas, say science, where they have a lot of projects and stuff like that. And I wouldn't want staff to be dipping their own funds to subsidize that, but it is a driving force, and these cuts, you know, are going to have an impact on our programs and on the education of the students in WIllington, if they're implemented. I mean, it's unfortunate, but, you know, we're supposedly in tight straits, and most towns are, you know. I don't have the answer, except that it's kind of sad that is happening, because if you had the money that you needed, maybe a wealthy town like Avon, or, you know, something like that, where they can, 1 mil will give them enough money to do almost anything.
Build a school.
I was talking,
But the thing is, our mill rate went up 2 mils, over 2 mils last year. And
The year before.
The year before.
Hmm?
The year before?
Not last year, but this year.
Yeah.
It was about 2
Not
mils.
this year, the year before.
And the grand list went down, and $1 million or more.
Something.
So that's a crushing blow, really. You know, I don't know if we're raising enough money to do some of the things that we want to do because of that. And this year, I don't know what the grand list is, whether it's going to drop again or not. And if the mill rate is, what, 30.7 or something, if that goes up again, you know, 2 mils, that's 4 mil increase in 2 years. That's quite an increase. And that has an impact on some people in town. I mean, some people can pay it, and it's no problem, but there are some who
Many of us.
have a real problem, you know, financially, and it's going to be a hardship. I don't have the answer.
I recognize that. I also want to recognize that we're within the 2 hours time that I had mentioned earlier. We're pretty
And also the
close.
basketball game.
Oh, well, Ben, you should have stopped 5 minutes ago. You didn't tell me that. I don't have television to watch that on. I'm sorry. You'll have to fill me in next week. We have another board budget workshop next week to cover another set of this. Everything is in here. It may be at the library. Next week at the library or here?
it's at the
Yes, next week is
library.
at the library. So next Wednesday at 6 PM.
I get a sense, though, that, and we moved up here tonight because I wasn't sure if we we're going to have a crowd, But if I get a sense that we're gonna have a crowd, we
In
may
the
need to come back to this room
Okay.
because,
As long as it's posted and also then put on the doors at the school so that anybody who didn't look online and assumed it was at the library as we had posted it
as you can hope.
knows to come back here is fine. But it will be, next week, we're gonna cover 6 different programs, and then we meet again the following Wednesday to cover the end of it. If we need to have further discussions, it will be on Wednesday the 6th. So we have plenty more time to discuss this, and plenty more time for public comment and input as we move forward. Let's try and stick to our comments as much as possible to the programs at hand. We're gonna have time at the end to discuss the big picture and how all of this is impacted, because I have the feeling that every night we're here, all 4 nights, we could all talk about our philosophies about budget, and I think we want to focus as much as possible on the nights that we're on program, on the programs that we've talked about. Just as did you want to have some last?
Yeah, and if
thoughts before
anybody,
we ask?
if anybody has any questions that you after you leave, email it to me. I will, gather answers and distribute. So you have answers that goes up there.
Okay, thank you. If there's anyone from the audience who would like to make public comments, we will take up to 5 minutes each person. Again, this is a meeting in public, so we're not going to be able to respond to your questions at this time. But if you do have a question, either submit it to the superintendent in writing or ask it now and we'll respond to it going out. So, sir?
I had 9 things, so I'll get through them.
Okay, I'm good. Just because I want to make this fair.
No, I'll get through it, don't worry.
Okay.
So, this is useless for us because we can't see anything. If you're a citizen, I don't see what you see. So it was largely, can you either make something available for the citizens, or can you put it up on a board or something? Yeah, it's extra work, but I don't know what you're talking about. It limits my ability to know what I'm commenting on.
Okay.
The second thing is, you have a mismatch here. In this document, you're calling these things cuts. And then another document that I can't see, you're calling them cuts. I think that the year over year, what you were looking at is actual. And this is cuts from requested. Am I right? You said these are the requests, and then we whittled it down, and whittled it down again, and whittled it down again, and we're at 3%.
So,
And the ones over here that you're talking about are not that. They're actual, they're year-over-year actual figures. Am I right?
So keep going.
Okay.
We'll address them all.
Right. The other, I'll skip 2 of them because they're probably not necessary, but security, that should come under buildings.
Right, that's not a program we handled tonight. That's on the list of the, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to answer these. I'm so bad at my own advice. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, so we will handle that another night. I'm sorry,
And,
keep
that's a
going.
quick question, I think.
Keep going.
Yeah, the transportation for after-school clubs, it's not twice as many clubs you can offer if you didn't offer the transportation. You can not spend that money.
Keep going.
And then $50,000 stipend, I think we need to see a breakout on that. There was comments on that, but we need to see something. We can't just go, oh, it's coaches and heads of departments. Well, show us what that $50,000 is. That's discretionary, and it's a lot of money. Those are my points.
Okay, so just to address them in a brief way, the budget is available on the Willington Education website.
So I can
So
print it out?
you can go on, print it out, look at it. All of the sections are up already. So if you want to see in advance what the security piece looks like, even though we're not talking about security on a given night, you can look at all of those details and see all of the pieces that we have in there. That will answer your question about the stipends. He was just adding up 2 or 3 of them across programs. We are not always very specific with our language about what's a cut to an actual or a cut versus other pieces. When you're looking at it, it's easy for us to all understand what our reference is. I appreciate that it's difficult when you don't have the detail in front of you. So if you do care to look at the detail, we're happy to have you look at it online. Obviously, if supplies are in short thing, we're not going to start photocopying lots of those for everybody because it's really our decision to do that. We encourage you, however, to delve into the information that's online. And we encourage you to come back and continue to ask questions. Is there anyone else who has comments? Okay, maybe not this meeting, maybe next meeting. Okay, keep coming back, and I'm sure there'll be something that piques your interest to talk about. Okay, so, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Well, I just had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm confused because you all kept saying we have questions. I didn't have questions, but I had comments that are about these 3 programs.
So there will be lots of opportunities for us to comment and to ask questions both over the next 4 weeks.
But they'll be about,
And you can, yes,
it'll be.
this is not the only time you can talk
February 12th
about center school. There will be lots of time for us to comment about center school and hall school. It's all gonna roll together. Part of what it is I just want us to focus on the content and not to discuss items that are beyond the scope of this. We could spend time, for example, discussing why the cost of diesel is so high. We have no control over the cost of diesel. We're gonna have to pay for school bus diesel either way, and I don't want us to get lured into a conversation about something we have no control over. So we do have control over these sections, and we will be both commenting on the cuts. I'm sure we all have strong feelings on what was presented today, and we will continue to have those conversations at this table. So, yes, please write them down, don't lose them if you have comments or questions. We just want to, sometimes it's important to see it all before we comment on any one piece of it, but I'm not precluding conversations about these items just because we covered them today. We will have opportunities.
Okay, I just don't want to wait till February 12th.
No.
But we can ask questions, is that what you're saying?
If you would like, if it would help, we can have a brief go-around before we adjourn for the board comment that we do for our regular meetings. At the end of the meeting, we do board comment, and everybody gets, up to their 5 minutes. If that would be something that you would like to include to be able to go on the record.
Well, I just think because what was just presented is fresh right now, and in a week, it's not going to be as fresh and not as.
Go ahead and make your comments.
Just my comment is one thing, is what, as Phil said, I think this is devastating. When I read the letter last night, it was devastating because I think we're going backwards. We have a goal, and we have in the back here about Hall School Point of Pride, expanding STEAM, and we're cutting positions that support STEAM. Both of those positions support STEAM. And the other part of that is we're cutting a position that we had a lot of outcry last year about keeping, and now it's on the board again. And I understand why, but we still have those same people in our population who are going to say, this isn't okay. And I think I understand because we are in a community with a very unique situation that is impacting our money everywhere. But that doesn't mean that our children who are under 18 have to suffer because of a situation that none of us have any control over. So we need to figure out a way, and we can't keep saying, well, because transportation costs keep going up and because the state keeps mandating more, that our children, our grandchildren around this table and in this community are going to suffer and lose things because of it. That's my, and I understand, we have to make tough choices here, but as Phil said, once it's gone, none of the positions that have ever been cut have come back. Going back to the fact that our children still alternate social studies and science 10 years later because there's no money to change that, and they go into high school with kids who had social studies every day for years. So that's where we're looking at. We have to keep in mind what we're here for is to keep our kids, and everything keeps getting more expensive. We've got to figure out a way to fix it. We've got to figure out a way to accommodate and not make that. That's all I want to say.
Well, I think it's a good idea for us if we want to comment. So Kiara, if there's anything you want to add or
I pretty much has kind of made my comments and asked my question throughout. So
Okay.
I have to digest it, think about it, and see what else comes up.
Okay. Anne?
It really is hard to see all the cuts and the supplies and a couple $100 for math and try, as a retired teacher, try to imagine how those can become lessons and materials and things like that. So it is devastating. I think devastating is a very good word to describe it. And maybe, like Tracy said, if we could just come up with some creative solutions, which easy to say, but not easy to do. So we'll work through the other programs and then see where we can go from here.
Herb, you were asking questions at the end. Is there anything else you'd like to add to your earlier
No,
comments?
most of my questions for today have been, so that I don't want to get into the dialogue until we've had a complete presentation and take the whole budget as a package eventually. I'm really just concerned with the fact that we, as everyone has mentioned, cuts are substantial and we're going to have, an impact on the programs and our educational system in town here. And that's something I'll mull over.
I've had more than my share of airtime. But I will say, I do recognize that there's a lot of creativity in the school community for having dealt with this stuff over the years. I just feel like there's a point where it's harder to be creative to overcome the impact. So, but I do recognize that some of the things that have, well, like even the makerspace idea originally and everything, have been enhancements to the schools. And I recognize that's a lot of hard work and innovation on the part of the educators. So.
Okay, so as chair, I get the prerogative of the last comment, and I will say that what we were presented with here today shows a shift in our priorities. It shows that we're willing to cut program in order to save money, and we're willing to do this at the expense of the education of our children. And if this community makes that decision, that's one way to look at it going forward. I don't know that this is the decision we must end with. I'm not satisfied with the cuts that are in here and the justification for those. I would have to see a lot more before I would be able to support a budget with cuts to what would be a flat program to this extent. So for me, I think that as a community, we need to start communicating about what our priorities are. And if there are people out there who care about education, I want to hear from them. We have Board of Education emails. If you care about it, I want to hear from you. Don't pretend that your neighbor's going to, step up and say that, oh, I like having a librarian. If that's the case, if you want to have more art supplies, if you want to have more books in the library, there are places to go with this. And I think that if the community does not step forward and make themselves heard in that way, then we will move forward with the plans as we see, as the community and the 7 of us will go on our best information. But we take public input very seriously, and we like to hear what you have to say and what your priorities are. I will grant you that the squeaky wheel sometimes gets the oil, but just because you might be here and you're the other people, we will also take into account those parents who are home with children tonight and could not come to a meeting like this. So if we hear via email from parents, just because you can't be here and say it verbally does not mean that your voice won't be heard. A lot of people watch us on the internet or listen to the audio tape, and I would like to hear from those people, even if it's not that they can come out to a meeting. So that said, we have a lot more to cover. This was only 3 of the different pieces. I'm not expecting significant differences. You kind of gave us the overview. But we want to hear all of the details, and I think you've got a little bit of information about things we want some additional work done on. And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? All in favor. That's the one piece of we do.
Oh, yeah. Robert's rule.